Star Wars Ahsoka Episode 6 has dropped, and I'm here to provide my recap and review for it. Let's get into this here. My opinion is basically that the only interesting character of the entire show is Ray Stevenson's Baylan Skoll, and that's even having Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra Bridger show up in this episode. This will be a spoiler-filled review and recap, so if you're not looking for spoilers, you should probably find another review to watch, because I'm going to be talking quite a bit about spoilers. We're going to be going through this episode piece by piece here. But the episode begins with Ahsoka and Huyang traveling inside a purrgil to the new galaxy in an attempt to stop Grand Admiral Thrawn from returning. The dialogue between the two is quite boring. Not only is it boring, but the entire sequence was done far better in Empire Strikes Back, when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda attempt to stop Luke from going to rescue his friends on Bespin. Basically, the entire point of the dialogue is supposed to be Ahsoka learning that saving the galaxy and saving your friends is not a mutually exclusive choice. It's possible that you can do both. However, it's unclear if she learns this lesson or not, because she's clearly unhappy with the direction of the conversation and abruptly ends it by requesting Huyang tell her a story about the galaxy. He does by quoting the Star Wars opening crawl and making the phrase "in a galaxy far, far away" a piece of dialogue rather than exposition setting up the movies is absolutely cringe and stupid. I'm sure there are a bunch of people that are like, "Oh my gosh, they actually included it in the dialogue of the show." And no, it's stupid. It should be exposition for the opening crawl, not be actually being included in the show. It's just stupid. It removes immersion, and it's just dumb. Next, the show transitions to Sabine being held captive on the Eye of Saiyan and getting upset that Baylan Skoll appears to have reneged on a deal to see Ezra. However, this is just childish behavior, especially coming from Sabine, who witnessed Pre Vizsla betray her mother in a similar fashion in Star Wars Rebels. Her whining to Skull and later to Thrawn would continue through at least half the episode until she was eventually cut loose to find Ezra Bridger. It's just absolutely insufferable, out of character, just terrible, terrible characterization and writing on the part of Dave Filoni. It's just unbelievable, too. Again, if you've watched anything of Sabine in Star Wars Rebels, you just can't buy it. And people who are clapping about this stuff, I don't know if you actually watched Star Wars Rebels or you just have bought into like, oh my gosh, Sabine is on screen. It just doesn't work. And it's like, have some discipline. Like, apparently you went under some training through Ahsoka. You're a Mandalorian. You shouldn't just be kind of incessantly whining that a guy who's clearly on the dark side reneged on a deal. It's like, how dumb are you? And it's kind of an insult to the audience to kind of portray her like that. The Eye of Saiyan eventually exits hyperspace in the new galaxy and lands on the planet Peridia, where the Purrgil migrate to die. It also happens to be the former power base of the Witches of Dathomir. Upon landing on the planet, Morgan Elsbeth, Shin Hati, Skull, and Ren meet with what appear to be the final three Dathomiri witches, who are clearly inspired by the Greek fates, as they can see the future and also somehow sense the reek of Jedi on Sabine Wren. They even have these little like threads of fate that they're kind of wielding. They look, if you've watched the animated Hercules movie, they look very similar to that. They act that way, and obviously they are the Greek fates. And then if you look at the credits, I think their names are literally like almost the same as the original Greek fates of history. They then transfer Ren to another prison where she whines to Skull about her deal. I mean, you can't, it's just incessant. There's also these like really long shots. So like when they're going to the planet, it just takes forever. And it's like that there's no dialogue or anything. They're just like staring and looking at each other like, oh, what is going to happen here? What is going to happen? What is going to happen? And it's just like, can we just speed it up here? Why is this even in here? Cut this out. We don't really need this. And this is something that they did in The Mandalorian, where they had these like long shots where they were trying to make it like feel like a Western, and it just doesn't work because it just feels long and drawn out. If you watch the original Conan, the 1984 one, they do a lot of this stuff. And I just, maybe it was something at the time. I just don't think it works anymore now. Let's move forward here. I don't need to like really see all of this stuff. And it's not like we're really getting anything when we're getting these close shots of the characters inside the ship, right? Maybe if we were getting like more shots of the outside and everything like that. But even then, I feel like those are really drawn out and they're trying to play it up. And because they draw it out so long, you kind of lose that effect of what they're trying to build for. Like the build up to Thrawn really loses that effect because it draws out way too long. If you watch the original, I think it's Return of the Jedi. It might be Empire Strikes Back when I think it might be Return of the Jedi when the Emperor arrives on the new Death Star. It's not like really drawn out. It's kind of quick and short, but you get that fear factor from him when he arrives on the Death Star and like the Royal Guard and everything like that. Nevertheless, after Ren is put in her new prison cell, one of the more interesting parts of the show occurs as Stevenson's Baylan Skoll provides some exposition about this new galaxy to Shin-Hati. His delivery is top-notch, and we get to understand a little bit more about his motivations and what he seeks, albeit it is still shrouded in mystery. His delivery, the mystery, and the ominous musical score definitely draw your attention to what is happening on the screen. You definitely want to know a little bit more about him, what his goals are, how he intends to obtain them, and what his overall endgame is. I mean, literally, this is the only person that you're actually interested in finding out his story. I think a lot of it has to do with the mystery and the combination of the musical score, and I think it actually works really well here, and then Stevenson's presence is just phenomenal, as well as his delivery. And I think his dialogue is probably the best. It's almost like they actually kind of really focused in on that and got it right, whereas like they didn't seem to pay attention to any of these other characters whatsoever, or didn't do a lot of work with them, or they were written by completely different people. That's possible too. So around 16 minutes into the episode, Thrawn's Star Destroyer, the Chimera, arrives over the Dathomiri Fortress. As it lands on a pedestal, Thrawn makes his entrance surrounded by stormtroopers wearing dirty armor and cobbled together armor. There's literally like duct tape and stuff on a lot of them. And they're in parade formation. You can see it here. Their chanting of Thrawn can be heard, but none of the stormtroopers appear to be actually chanting it. It was really weird, kind of drew me out. Like you hear Thrawn, 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 but like they're just standing there. They're not like moving or saying like their heads aren't moving at all. Clearly the actors were not chanting Thrawn, Thrawn, Thrawn. That was something that was put in the score. And I do think that kind of pulls your immersion out of it because it's like, well, why aren't these people doing it? I think obviously poorly edited, and it definitely ruins the entire foreboding atmosphere they were clearly trying to capture. And then Lars Mikkelsen's Thrawn also does not exude the character's supreme confidence in the way he carries himself. I think his physique is a little lacking too. I understand that he's in his 60s, but I think that's on Lucasfilm. They should have cast someone a little bit better. I do like his voice and everything like that, but I think they should have cast younger. I think we should have got someone that looks kind of like George C. Scott as General Patton. I think that's kind of the presence that you want from a Thrawn figure. If you looked at any of the comic book stuff, the comic book adaptations, he is kind of this imposing physical figure. He is someone that can be a physical threat, obviously, but he doesn't actually do that a lot of times. It's more a strategic and mental threat. And then I think actually the director, Jennifer Getzinger, appears to have realized this as well, as like a lot of the shots that you see are close-ups of Thrawn from his chest and above. So basically you're only just seeing kind of like how I am right now, and above. Obviously there are some shots like this one where you get full body, and those are the shots that are being mocked relentlessly already on social media. And I think rightfully so. I mean, because he is poorly cast. He probably should have done something. I mean, he's even like slouched over and everything, and obviously that could be due to his age, but he should be someone who has good posture, stands up straight, and is kind of has that commanding presence, that super confidence, arrogance, that I'm in charge and what I say goes, and you better be listening to it, or something bad's going to be happening to you. I think Tarkin had that kind of presence. Peter Cushing, I'm just not feeling it from Lars Mikkelsen here. While Ren finally stops whining about her deal with Baylan Skoll when Thrawn appears to honor it by giving her amount, provisions, and intel on Ezra Bridger's whereabouts, she doesn't think to do any critical thinking about his motives or believe he might renege on it despite being in a war against him where he was constantly using deceptive tactics in order to get the upper hand on Phoenix Squadron. That's right. So they bring Sabine from her prison cell. Basically Thrawn's like, oh, it's good to see you here. You can go find Ezra. And Sabine's like, okay, great, thanks. And doesn't think like, oh, this guy's plotting to basically renege on me after she was just reneged on by Baylan Skoll. I mean, absolutely insufferable, stupid characterization, treating this character like an absolute complete and utter idiot. Mainly probably because they want her to learn some kind of lesson. And it's like, well, she wouldn't be acting like that in the first place. So when you do have her learn the lesson, it doesn't work because it's just, you didn't put in the effort for her to kind of like earn what the lesson is, because you just created this terrible characterization in the first place. So it's just garbage, terrible writing. Again, anytime Sabine is on screen, it's just awful. You want to turn it off because you're just like, what am I watching here? This is stupid and dumb. And then again, she appears to just buy the idea that Thrawn is acting in goodwill, given she didn't destroy the map leading to this new galaxy, and this will allow him to leave Peridea. I mean, like, you literally fought a war against this guy. You know how he operates, and you're just going to believe what he says? I mean, come on. I mean, did you not like understand how he works in the past? Like, it's so stupid. Thrawn clearly has another motive as he deploys Baylan Skoll and Shin-Hati to follow Sabine and kill her and Ezra Bridger if she indeed finds him. Nevertheless, Sabine heads out into the wastelands fully armed, riding upon a wolf-like creature. I think they call them a howler at the end. I think Ezra, that's how he describes it. Upon making her first stop, she's ambushed by this new galaxy's Sand People or Tusken Raiders. There's a brief combat sequence with Sabine using her blasters and armor before eventually using her lightsaber. This is not an understatement. This combat sequence was atrocious. I think this was one of the worst combat sequences I've ever seen in Star Wars. It was absolutely terrible. Terrible. It starts with her getting ambushed and her mount quickly running off. As she screams at the wolf to come back, she's getting repeatedly shot by the nomads. That's right. So she's literally getting shot at. The first thing she does as she's getting shot at isn't to like run for cover. It's her to like whine at the mount that's running away, clearly spooked from her getting shot at. And that's what she's doing instead of like, maybe seeking cover. In fact, they actually have her surrounded and she just stands in the middle with the Beskar armor and the writing keeping her safe. Literally, there's like a bunch of rocks surrounding her. She's standing in the middle of it and they're just shooting her and they're just bouncing off her Beskar armor. I mean, absolutely atrocious. And when it's not hitting their Beskar armor, like they're just missing like 3 feet wide. I mean, absolutely terrible. And then Sabine can't hit anything. So when she actually does fire back, you see the guy standing next to the rock, and then she hits the rock, which is like 3 feet to the right of the guy. I mean, what? You're a Mandalorian. You know how to shoot a blaster and hit targets. It's just terrible, terrible. Her blasts are a couple feet off the mark. This is from a trained Mandalorian soldier who fought in the war against the Galactic Empire, right? Come on, like she knows how to fight. She eventually finds cover after killing one of the nomads, but then she literally decides to, I'm going to step out of the cover. And then as soon as she does, she's quickly attacked in close quarters combat by another one of the nomads. At one point, one of the nomads hits her in the back of the head. I'm not even joking about it. Like, literally hits her in the back of the head. You can see the screenshot right here. It does literally nothing to her. She kind of stumbles forward, and that's it. And then she just kind of starts shooting and fighting again. She's not knocked out or anything. She doesn't actually get, like, defeated. I mean, these people, there's like 8 of them shooting at her. I mean, we saw what clone troopers can do when they ambush someone with like superior numbers, but Sabine doesn't actually die or anything. She's totally fine and actually wins the day. She eventually does get knocked to the ground, but they just stand there and watch her get up and pull her lightsaber instead of maybe like just continually shooting at her. It becomes laughable. I mean, they then even just stop firing any weapons and only engage her in melee combat. I mean, again, I'm not understating how absolutely terrible this fight sequence was. It was absolutely atrocious, and anyone telling you otherwise didn't actually watch it. Or if they did watch it, they I don't know what they saw. They didn't see what I saw, that's for sure. And then I think the episode just goes downhill from here. It gets absolutely worse. We get a brief scene of Thrawn ordering two attack squadrons to aid Skull in the event Sabine finds Bridger. Ren begins lecturing the mount, like literally starts lecturing this wolf rat dog thing that ran off and is now slowly following her. I mean, this is so stupid. It's absolutely bizarre and breaks any immersion one might still have. I mean, I get that people might think like, oh, look, it's a cute dog. It's acting like a dog, like it wants to befriend her, but it's just ridiculous. I mean, this is a mount that she just met, and she's out here lecturing it like she's been with it for like forever. It does not work whatsoever. It's just completely stupid. I mean, there's one point where she tries to like send it away. Like you can see right here, she's pointing and telling it to go away. Like this is how dumb Sabine is. This is the mount that has the provisions. She doesn't know how long it's going to take her to find Ezra. She has got some like intel, I guess, from Thrawn, which we don't even know what it was. They don't even tell us what that is. We don't see any of that. But this is where her provisions are, how she's going to survive. She doesn't know how long she's going to be out here. She could be out here for months, a really long time. Obviously, she doesn't have that long if she wants to get back and on the ship to the Chimera and try and stop Thrawn and everything. But, I mean, like, she could be out there for a long time. I mean, I would assume, based on the decisions that she made, she has resigned to the fact that Thrawn is going to go back and she's going to be staying on this planet with Ezra. But who knows how her brain is thinking, or the writer's brain is thinking, creating this character. But I mean, just absolutely stupid. Like, why would you like tell your provisions to run away? Like, at least if you don't want the dog to be following you, at least take the provisions and put it on your pack or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's really, really stupid and dumb. And then I think it just is more of like they want you to believe she's a whiny child, as they've characterized her in the first half of this episode. And I just think that's an insult to the character. I think it's actually an insult to Natasha Liu Bordizzo. It's an insult to the audience that they're treating her this way. It's just absolutely pathetic. Nevertheless, the wolf makes amends by discovering a bunch of hermit crab individuals that do indeed lead her to Ezra Bridger. Surprise! She's not going to be out there for a month, so that's why she doesn't need the provisions. That's why she can tell the dog to go away, because she finds these hermit crab people. And this is one of these long, drawn-out scenes. Again, it takes an excruciatingly significant amount of time and really drags the episode. I mean, I would not be surprised if one falls asleep during the sequence. I mean, you are gonna. It's like taking a Xanax, man. It's gonna put you to sleep. I think that's and maybe Ambien. It's gonna give you like an Ambien. I think Ambien is the one that puts you to sleep, right? Xanax is the one that keeps you awake. To wake you from this monotony, we do get another scene with Baylan Skoll discussing his past, but also briefly hinting at his plans for the future for himself as well as Shin Hati. He also teases that the Dathomiri might be fleeing from a greater power. I actually enjoy this scene. Anytime we get to see Ray Stevenson, he just commands the screen. I do think there's some issues here as well because he's kind of. It's definitely for the audience more so than for Shin Hati, even though they're doing that, because I would have thought like he would have explained a little bit more of this to Shin, maybe, if he's like seeing her as an apprentice and actually being a true successor to him and wanting to continue his legacy. But he's just telling her this now, and she doesn't really understand why they're there or what's going on and stuff like that. So I did find that a little disconcerting, but I think that's because they are just trying to. They did this specifically so they could tell you, the audience, what his goals are, rather than her. She should have already kind of known some of this stuff and been privy to it, I would think. Maybe not everything, but she should have had at least some idea on like what his end goals are, where she thinks that they're just kind of going to become the next Sith or whatever. At least that's how it's extremely implied in the show. But this idea of this greater power is kind of foreshadowed or hinted at earlier in the episode when Thrawn was giving out the order for the 2 attack squadrons to aid him. At that same time, he explained why he was only sending 2 instead of more. And it's because that their forces have seen significant losses since being in exile, meaning that they've probably been fighting some other kind of opponent out there, and that that could be a greater power. So who knows though? We're not really sure. They could be suffering disease or something like that too. You never know. Or it could be whatever this new type of force, like a new type of force that could be that the rumors say. Who knows? Anyways, as the episode begins winding down, with Sabine Wren being taken to the Hermit Crab or Noti village. I think it's Noti. If you watch the subtitles, it describes that they're talking in Noti, but it also says the nomads are talking in Noti, but it definitely appears to be 2 distinct languages, so it's unclear if these are Noti or the nomads are Noti or what's really going on there. But anyways, she eventually gets to this village. She's reunited with Ezra Bridger. I think their reunification is absolutely extremely awkward. You do get this kind of embrace, but Bridger rightfully asks how she got there alongside a number of other questions that you would think be pertinent. And I credit the writers for actually having the questions there, but then he doesn't press for any answers. Sabine Wren punts on all of the questions. He's like, Bridger, I just want to be happy. Let's just enjoy this moment and I found you. And it's like, well, sure, but you have to like tell him like what's going on. He thinks that you've got a way to get out of here. Like it's just really, really terrible. Again, shows Sabine as just a person who doesn't have any kind of responsibility, honor, or integrity. And if you watch Star Wars Rebels, like I don't think you can truly buy it. It's just terrible. So I don't understand why, like, if you're a Rebels fan, if you like this characterization of Sabine Wren, it's truly a slap in the face. One would think Bridger would be able to sense Sabine's emotions too, given his Jedi training, or at least press her on what actually happened. One might also think that Sabine would want to inform Ezra about what's going on, given she might not be stranded there with him once Thrawn leaves. Nope, she'd rather just enjoy the moment. Terrible, terrible, awful writing. The episode concludes with the Dathomiri witches informing Thrawn that another Jedi is traveling through hyperspace to Peridea. Thrawn suspects it is the recently deceased Jedi Ahsoka Tano, because that's what Baylan Skoll informed Elsbeth, that he killed her. Which, okay. And tasks Elsbeth with providing him with a report on everything she can dig up on her. A terrible cliffhanger. The scene is used to showcase that the witches can foresee events across the galaxies, as well as depict Thrawn as meticulous. That's pretty much all it serves for. Honestly, I think it was probably unnecessary, but I guess it could create some kind of suspense for a potential showdown between Thrawn and Ahsoka. I think you'd be better off just ending it with they should have just ended it with Ezra and Sabine meeting and hugging and cutting there, not actually asking any of those questions that Ezra asks, and then you kind of can deal with that in the next episode, instead of having this absolutely garbage meeting between the two and then this pointless scene at the end, which should have honestly just been cut. Just completely pointless. Overall, if you didn't really get it, I thought this episode was flat out boring. The series draws out scenes way too long with wide sweeping shots and dramatic music, but usually nothing of import happens. It's all build up with no payout. The acting is quite dry for the most part. Stevenson and Diana Lee and Asanto are the only ones who kind of make you pay attention. Stevenson particularly carries every scene he's in, and they are indeed the only interesting moments in the show. The series might have been better off cutting everything else and just leaving in Skull's mission at this point. However, even those scenes might have been better off showing rather than telling, because it is a lot of him kind of just talking to the camera, talking to Shinhati, etc. It's not actually like showing us what's going on. It's likely one could just skip this episode entirely and not feel like you are missing anything. So those are my thoughts on episode 6, Ahsoka. Let me know what you thought in the comments below.
Subscribe for more.